Hey everybody, welcome to Analog Stick Radio, episode 4, and this is not the opening joke you're looking for. I'm your host, Mitch, and I will be joined today by my absolutely splendid co-host, Dakota.
Hello.
And my, so-so co-host, Chris.
I'm alright.
Hey guys, how you doing this week? Let's talk about what we did this week. I played a metric shit ton of Counter-Strike, despite not being able to use grenades. I had a great time. I finally ranked up in Counter-Strike, so I can now play with Chris.
Nice.
It is very exciting.
Round
We
of
got there.
applause.
Dakota, what did we play this week?
This week, I took a little vacation, so I wasn't at home too much, but I did get in some iPhone gaming on the aeroplane. I played Out There, Omega Edition. Have you guys played that one?
No, I have not.
No.
It's cool. It's like a little, it's a space exploration game that basically boils down to resource management, but it's very creative. Almost feels like FTL in a way, but less combat oriented and more resource management oriented. You go from planet to planet, swap ships around, and it's even got a little bit of alphabet vocabulary unlock, kind of like finding Albed primers in Final Fantasy X, if you've ever played, where you got to like slowly unlock the alien race's language. It's pretty cool.
You're hitting me on so many nostalgic levels
Oh
right now.
man, yeah, it's a good one. It's probably very cheap. And
Is this on the iOS?
Yeah, it's a nice little iPhone game. It's one of my favorites. I always go back
free?
and play it. No, I don't think so. I couldn't tell you. Maybe $1 or $2. It's worth it.
I mean, I love Faster Than Light, so if it's anything like Faster Than Light, I'm already on board.
It's going to have a little bit of that to it for sure. Yeah, check it out.
Awesome. I definitely will. Chris, what did we do?
Final update for Fallout news. I feel like we should have a news jingle, like
Yeah, right.
I finished it.
What does that mean?
I mean, I got to the bottom and I built a bunch of rooms and now I'm bored.
Yeah.
So it's done.
That game was always headed towards that conclusion.
Yeah, I mean, it shouldn't have gotten that far.
I don't think that was the end game they were looking for. I think Chris just brought it to that point.
Yeah,
right.
I was done.
And it kind of highlights the problems that we talked about, where the end game looked a lot like the early game.
Yeah.
Once you get to 60 dwellers, it's the same as having 200 dwellers.
Yep.
Right.
Ain't that the truth?
Yeah.
No, you now we know that's the truth.
Yeah.
I thought maybe something cool was going to happen if you had actually done that.
Nope.
But apparently nothing cool happened.
Just keep doing the same
It's
stuff.
just a sex brothel with a very sexy
No, it
radio
wasn't even
station.
anymore because I couldn't make any more babies.
That's right. So now it's just terrible.
The coolest thing that happened out of all of that work is that he's only a month away from the actual release of Fallout 4. He tricked him into forgetting that he's not actually playing Fallout proper, but now it's even sooner.
Exactly.
Now it is even sooner.
I also played actually BioShock Infinite because we talked about it last week.
Was that your first time playing through it?
Yeah.
And you're not finished yet?
No, because I haven't had a lot of time this week.
Sure.
I definitely, I think I'm about 60-70% of the way through. It's awesome. I'm really loving it.
The game is good. So talk to me about the gameplay though, because Dakota said he didn't like the gameplay as much. So what are your thoughts?
I feel like it's a little bit slower paced. I mean, there's some really cool features like with the I don't know what it's called, the hook that you get to go around on the rails, and that's really cool because you like fly around, you get to pick your own areas. But for the most part, I don't know. I just really like the world. Like it's so it's just so cool. Like the idea of that they put out there, like this society. Like this weird Americana society. I don't know. I really like it.
Yeah.
Right. They've
like it too.
Always been about like utopia ideas that are larger than life that go somehow wrong, right? You
exactly.
Kind of find out why. And I mean, the writer Kevin Levine, I think his name is. He's brilliant. I mean, the subject material is absolutely extraordinary. I think maybe the reason, trying to defend myself here, why I didn't go bananas over the gameplay is because I was in a funk where I was determined to do man mode in every game I played. So I played that game on hard or very hard. I can't remember which just amounts to the enemies having a shitload of health, which isn't necessarily fun. Maybe we can do a podcast on the right way to do difficulty. And I don't think extra enemy health and less player health is the right way to do difficulty.
No, I agree. Just like upping their health, or like I mean, even like just making their bullets hit you harder or something like that's not.
I feel like this is a whole another podcast. We could probably
this is a whole nother. We could go down a rabbit hole there of just things to talk about. But instead, actually, what I'd like to do is let's just move on to our main topic for this evening.
Okay, so last week we talked about gaming storytelling in games, right? So this week I thought it would be a good idea to kind of piggyback on that idea and talk about game integration kind of with other media, other mediums of storytelling. So for instance, like gaming to movie adaptations or movie to game adaptations, books. What are your guys' thoughts? Like what's the problem? A lot of people seem to think that movie adaptation of games, or especially game adaptation to movies, are just awful.
Because they are. They very much, almost 99% of the time, they are absolute trash. I mean, it's just you have some outliers, obviously. Like every once in a while, you'll get one that's done correctly, but I think that has a lot to do with which movie they choose to make into a game. And I think the main issue that we're seeing here is that every movie is being made into a game, and it's not necessarily correct to do that.
Yeah, and it comes from, I think, a long lineage of productation or productization of movie properties, right? They were doing this back when we were wee lads, right? With Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle action figures for every damn movie, and it worked. They still do it, for heaven's sake. Like, all the Marvel movies always have movie tie-in toys, the whole 9 yards, lunchboxes, all that stuff. And so games are just another version of that, right?
Yeah, but I feel like it used to be easier to do it. Like, back in the day, I'm remembering, for instance, they did it obviously before this, but Super Nintendo, I feel, was like a golden age, at least for me, for like movie-based games, like the Lion King game, or like the Aladdin game.
Okay.
Do you guys remember that?
But that's because they were all side-scrollers.
Exactly.
Like, they knew how to make a side-scroller, so they just kept making a side-scroller with interesting features.
That's exactly what I'm saying, but that was a point in time where side-scrolling was like kind of the main game modality, pretty much. Like everything, a lot of games were side-scrollers, and it's easy to make I guess it's not easy to make a decent side-scroller, but if you have a team that's experienced enough, they could pretty much bust out a good like side-scroller with, solid gameplay. But it's much harder nowadays when all these games, like we talked about last time, need such high production value to make something that's worth playing, worth looking at, worth anything.
Yeah, you're basically taking a movie and trying to make like a movie-style game out of this movie, and it's like, why? It's already a movie.
Yeah, I think you really surprised me with those examples, Chris, because those are good examples, in my opinion, of good games, right? Would you guys agree?
Yeah,
that's why I brought the crap out of Lion King on the SNES.
Absolutely, and I think the reason why that might be, I wish we had numbers. How close to the movie's releases did those games come out, right? Because I think part of the problem that we see with poor movie to game adaptations today is the fact that they're trying to meet deadlines, right? They have to try to release the video game as close to the movie date as possible so they can reap in the product sales piggybacking on the movie's success or not.
You know what else I feel? I feel like they kind of get limited to the fact that they have to hit certain... I feel like this is the big problem with a lot of movie to game adaptations. They're stuck trying to hit major plot points to the movie instead of trying to develop their own storyline that would flow better. Do you understand what I'm trying to say?
I do, yeah. What makes a good video game story may not necessarily make a good movie narrative.
Yeah, but more than that, like, for instance, I'm trying to think. I haven't played any movie-based games lately, but if they made an Avengers 2 game movie, which they might have, but they have to, like, hit the point where Stark creates Ultron, and they have to, like, they all meet him for the first time. They might have to, like, hit that in the game, so then they have to, like, do this scene with a bunch of weird Ultrons and Iron Man things. Like, it might be fun, or it just might be a plot point that they needed to get in there because it has to represent what happened in the movie.
Well, yeah, I think that's the main problem I think you're going to experience is that movies aren't just like you don't just run through it in one kind of take. They jump around. You're focusing on this scene, and then you're focusing on a scene from another character, maybe in a completely different location. For example, Avengers 2. Like, you're watching the Avengers kind of assemble in that one computer program they're building, and then Ultron is over here doing something completely different. But that's a major plot point. We need to know that. But you can't really do that in a game because, like, you're playing as, like, the Avengers.
Yeah,
It's just like this unknown information to the Avengers, but it's still a plot point, and the movie doesn't make sense without it, so the game won't make sense without it, so you'd basically just have to have, like, a random cutscene, I guess.
But
that's the problem.
You could do that. There's plenty of, like, Japanese RPG games that, like, you see you're doing your thing with the main heroes, but then on the other side it'll just do a cutscene of, like, what the villain's doing in the villain layer, like, ah ha ha ha, wringing his hands together. Like, that happens in games. I just feel like it's a very awkward transition when you have to hit certain points for a movie. Like, at least for a game, you're designing the storyline yourself. If you try and base something off something that somebody else has already written, it's going to become very awkward to hit certain things, maybe if you don't want it to flow that way. But
Right.
you're pressured to make it.
Your
flow.
structure is
Yeah.
based around their structure.
Exactly.
Like, in my opinion, I think the problem here is not. I mean, that is a major element, and some games will do it really elegantly. Like the Halo game, for example, one of them, I believe, you're like playing as the Master Chief character, but then like you go to this next, like you get to a point in the chapters, and then you play as the alien guy.
Oh,
like,
yeah,
the main
yeah,
alien
the Covenant
You
guy.
switch,
right, yeah.
and I was like, that was pretty interesting. I was like, oh, this is cool. I'm kind of seeing it from both sides. It was a very interesting way to tell the story like that. But the problem with these movie adaptations to games is exactly what I said at the beginning. Like, sometimes the structure of the movie or the universe of the movie just does not lend itself to gaming at all. It just should not be a game. That's the point.
Yeah.
They're just trying to make these games out of things that should not be games.
And the
Yeah.
reverse is also true.
Well,
Right?
I mean, the reverse is even
Like,
honestly. I think
it's
the reverse
much more
is even
difficult.
worse. I
Yeah.
think the reverse is absolutely worse.
Well, I
But, like,
think
think about it. Like games that can their universe lends themselves, or movies that their universe lends themselves to games. Talking about like Spider-Man, for example, is one of probably the most successful like movie to game type, of transitions, because the Spider-Man universe. That's kind of what it is. Like, he just runs around fighting crime, and he like spins his web all over town, and like that sounds like a sweet game.
I feel
like
I
that
feel
sounds
that's
awesome.
a little bit different though, because now you're going less from movies and more for comic book.
Well, comic
type.
to movie to
And
game, but still.
that's a comic book storyline, I feel, is way more conducive to a game than any particular movie.
I think what we're
Right.
seeing is that, and what Mitch was trying to get at, is that the fundamental stories that you are able to tell through each of the mediums may not strictly be the same. And when an artist goes into any medium and says, I'm going to use this medium to tell a story, it's so much easier and it's so much more natural if they know what medium they're working with, right? You're not going to tell the same story in a paneled comic book format that you might in a chapter book with no pictures. The way that you approach what kind of story you're going to tell is going to be fundamentally different. And I think the same can be said with movies and games, right? If you have a game, we kind of touched on this a little bit, it makes more sense to have a story whose narrative makes more sense with a fixed perspective, where you're always with a small set or maybe even a single character, whereas with a movie, you might jump around. And I mean, Chris, you mentioned that it is possible for the game to present some sort of cutscene to say, oh, by the way, but that only goes so far. Imagine a movie like Snatch, right? With like so many perspectives and so many cuts and jumps. That kind of story you just cannot tell in a video game format, because a video game demands that you stay with a small set of characters for a
Yes.
majority of the time. So
Right,
it's limiting.
That should not be a game, basically.
Right. And so when studios try to shoehorn one type of story into another medium, that's where we kind of see things fall apart.
Now, do you think maybe it also, this is a point I actually kind of just thought of, do you think maybe it also has to do with the fact that, like you said in the beginning, where they're trying to meet deadlines and just basically trying to milk a cash cow, that maybe they're not hiring the best quality game designers? So you're also, not only does the movie not really lend itself to a game, but it's also just being designed poorly.
Yeah, I think there's some credence to that. I mean, I don't want to badmouth any studios in particular, but it certainly seems to be the case that when you have a studio that makes a truly great game, they want to make this great thing, and they're devoting all of their energy and time into sculpting this piece of work, and they're not worried about how it's supposed to maybe translate, or how they need to translate something in order to to communicate an experience from one medium to another. They're just saying, I want to make this great thing, and they kind of don't have that added complexity and box that they have to fit into in order to produce what they're trying to make.
I mean, exactly. I'm not trying to like bash certain studios, but if you look at the amount of like work put into Destiny, for example, and you look at the amount of work put into like the last Harry Potter game for Xbox 360, the amount of work is just, it's like night and day. It's not the same. And I think that may also be a larger problem, because even like the Spider-Man game, for example, you could tell there was a lot of work put into that. Like, it's a very, very detailed game. And some of these other adaptations that we don't like, I can't even name them because they're just all terrible. They probably just don't have as much budgeting or funding or time to put into it.
I mean, that's a very complex issue, because you're not only like, this is a whole other issue, because the people who work for these specific studios that pump out movie games are going to be the kind of people who maybe they aren't at the top of their game. Like, not to put anything, like I said, like, we're not trying to put anybody down, but, Hideo Kojima, like, these, like, brilliant minds in gaming, they don't want to be stuck to a certain structure. Maybe they've already, they've made a bunch of games in the past. They're trying to move on. They're trying to create these new experiences. Maybe sometimes these other studios are filled with inexperienced people who are just, getting their feet on the ground, like, oh, I'm going to start making games. This is great. This is like a structured environment. I'm going to try my best. And maybe they're not, it's going to be
like
cheaper.
Entry level game development.
Exactly. So it's going to be maybe cheaper level, also cheaper cost for the studio to rent out, like, to hire this studio as opposed to, like, getting BioWare to do a movie.
That makes perfect sense. I mean, it absolutely, I could say objectively that it's easier to adapt an idea, of course, than to create a new one. Oh, I'm not blowing anybody's minds, I guess, when I'm saying that. But even when I was learning how to program, the first things I did were to write games that already existed. Like, for class, I implemented Pac-Man because I knew exactly how it was supposed to work, so my target was very clear, and It was very easy for me to work towards a spec or a blueprint as opposed to trying to create something on the fly. So in the same way, it makes perfect sense that when you have a studio, like a movie studio or a production company that owns a movie, like Warner Brothers, they make a movie and they say, and we also want a game product, then they have a very clear idea of what exactly they want. They have the movie to act as the blueprint or the spec, and then the design studio might have some freedom within that space, but it's certainly more restricted, which means that it might be a bit easier to create.
I mean, I agree. They do that a lot in a lot of different areas of study. They kind of make you do something that's already been done, so it's a lot easier to do it, basically.
Right. When you're an artist,
wrap your head around it.
You trace first, and then you draw.
Yeah, when you learn how to play guitar, you learn songs that already exist first, right? And then you write.
Right.
So it's
what happened when games started becoming movies. I like this. This is great because how many, like, video games is a pretty new medium. Movies were out for a while, so when they started trying to turn games into movies, there's nothing really done before. There's no technique still, pretty much, that's been developed to better make a game into a movie. I feel there's some games that I felt like movies that did a decent job at getting the game feeling to it. And one of those I'm going to bring up, I feel like I'm going to get some flack for this, but I really enjoyed the first Mortal Kombat movie.
I swear to you, I have that down as an example of bad, awful bad.
I'm staring at my terrifyingly bad game to movie adaptations list, and one of the first ones I wrote down was Mortal Kombat.
No.
So, Chris, what do you like about the movie?
The thing is, about the movie, like, I feel like out of a lot of games, like, you could let's take two fighting game movies, for example.
Okay.
Put Mortal Kombat next to the Street Fighter movie.
You don't like Jean-Claude Van Damme?
That's not...
Exactly, but that's what I'm saying. You have a storyline. How are you going to make a game based off of, like, you know, a bunch of dudes and chicks fighting each other? I feel like they did a great job of getting the storyline, the base storyline for Mortal Kombat, and trying to implement it, albeit in a cheesy way, but I feel like that's more of like a popcorn munchy like movie. It's not going out to win any Oscars.
That's
but I was
true.
thoroughly entertained the entire time. Like, there was no point where it's like, why are they doing this? Or this is really stupid. Like, there were some things that was like, that's kind of lame, but
It
that's
kind
still
of came
fun.
before a time where movies began adapting these crazy genre ideas like comic books and stuff like that. And so
Yeah.
I think expectations were very low with the first Mortal Kombat movie. And you're right. I mean, it was like a very easygoing, kind of silly, fun to watch. Nobody sat back and thought, oh man, this movie's taking itself so seriously, it's awful, right? They
Exactly.
looked at it and said, the movie knows it's awful, it's melodramatic, you've got an old guy like impressing upon everybody the fate of the earth while electricity buzzes out of his eyeballs, and another guy flies and does juggling kicks while screaming, la 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 la, and everybody's just okay with it, right?
Yeah, exactly.
I don't know. I mean, I'll give you credit that they did a good job taking a game with almost no storyline and giving it an understandable storyline, I guess. It was still god-awful, though. It was still so bad.
Well, I like to compare it to the Tomb Raider movie with Angelina Jolie. Like, that movie
was great, awesome.
It was a good movie. I enjoyed it.
One of the better video game movies, for sure.
It definitely was. But the thing is, the suspension of belief is less in a Tomb Raider movie. Like, we have plenty of movies such as, Raiders of the Lost Ark, a lot of Indiana Jones type movies where people are going after secret gems and things like that. So a Tomb Raider game, that's going to make a lot of sense to the lay person.
It's not
if
as
you will.
much of a stretch of reality.
It's not like you're going to have a lizard man shooting acid at a
Right.
skeleton with a spear in his arm.
Okay,
So
but
do you
see,
think
that's the problem. It's the exact same problem with games to movies as it is, movies to games as it is games to movies. It's if the game allows itself to be interpreted in a movie form, do it. I'm going to bring up an example of a terrible idea that should have never been done, and I guarantee you I'm going to get a ton of flack for this, but I don't care. Why the fuck did they make a Mario Brothers movie? Because that storyline makes zero sense whatsoever.
I feel like that's another example of, at the beginning, nobody had no idea what to do.
When he's showing them the bag of mushrooms, I lost it. I was like, this is the dumbest movie I've ever seen in my life.
I loved that movie for what it was. Like, I'm different, though, because I feel like that was a movie that's so bad it's good type genre.
Or it's just so bad that
like,
it's just bad.
I mean, I don't think of it as if you don't look at it as a Mario movie, like, related to the IP at all, like, that's just it was just
bizarre.
a bizarre. Yeah, it was just
bizarre.
a weird
like they
out
tried
there.
to translate. I mean, it's tough, right? Because kind of what I got from you earlier, Chris, is that maybe the movies like Tomb Raider or Hitman, maybe Prince of Persia, those are more close to reality. You have to suspend disbelief more because they're more grounded. They're not fantastical so much, and so they're easier to translate into a movie. Whereas,
Exactly.
God, Mario Brothers is the most Japanesey, fantastical stuff you can get, right?
The game makes no
jumping
sense.
on dinosaurs.
If you think about the entire universe of Mario, it makes zero sense at all.
and
Like,
I
I ate a
can't
mushroom,
imagine.
I got bigger, I ate a flower, I can spit fire. Like, what?
Yeah, and they tried to interpret those ideas from the game directly, and I think that's part of the problem.
Yes, right there.
One of the things that I had written down is that part of the problem with game to movie adaptations is that you have studios try to translate games gameplay into a movie instead of the game's narrative. And last week we talked about video games providing two pillars of experience: gameplay and narrative. So if you're going to go from a medium that can offer two to a movie that can only offer one, why on earth would you try to translate the one that doesn't fit? You don't translate gameplay into narrative. You just translate narrative into narrative. And I think that might be what movie games are missing.
This is a weird, totally bizarre example. I don't know what I'm feeling about this, what I'm about to say. Like the Doom movie. was the worst movie. Like, I was so disappointed.
I
I know
seen
you.
that.
I
With
bet
The
you
Rock.
all. I bet everybody forgot the Doom movie. It was awful. It didn't have anything to do with hell demons or stuff. Anything. It was just the worst. Every character was taking themselves too seriously in this bizarre, like, world. But what the one 1 minute section of the movie I did enjoy was when they actually brought it to a first person view of him shooting people in the hallway. Do you remember that?
I remember this.
No,
Like, I felt like that's the first time I ever felt like a video game was translated well into a movie. I'm like, wow, like, I don't want the whole movie to be like this, but like, this particular scene at that particular moment in the movie was right.
It was just
You know
the
what I
tip
mean?
of the hat to the game.
Yeah, like, it was like, this is exactly what a movie that's trying to portray a game should do. Like, if you took out the rest of the shit, like, and made it into something cohesive and good, and then, like, added little bits of that take a nod at the game.
Yeah, like an homage to the game.
Yeah, and
Like
just do it in a, like, kind of a subtle, that wasn't, I don't know if that, you could call that subtle, though, but I feel like it was done, like, it's just subtly enough, like, a different perspective of the character, which is reminiscent of the way that it's played in the game, and then just at the right point in the movie to where it makes sense.
Yeah, I agree with you. It was like a little nod that didn't seem like it was going out of its way to do it. It just
Exactly.
looked like a creative camera angle, which it was in a degree. It was definitely a creative camera angle, but it was also a nod to the game, which that's what you should be doing. Make it a normal movie, focus on the narrative, and if there's ever room for something like that, throw it in there, because the people that don't know the Doom game that much can still enjoy the narrative, because that's, I think, the idea behind it is try to get people who maybe don't play the game to enjoy the narrative of the game without having to play it, but then, give some sort of, like, incentive, I guess, to the gamers that have played the game, like, oh, that's from the movie or from the game, I get it.
Yeah, we're going to love and gobble up Easter eggs. I mean, that's going to be one of the main motivating factors for a gamer to go see a video game, a movie based on a video game they enjoy, right?
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
I don't know. I want to ask you guys this question, because I think this is the most important question here. Like, what, if you had to pinpoint in both mediums, like, the biggest problem, like, what is happening, what would you say that, like, the number one problem with what they're trying to do, either adapting a game to a movie or moving to a game, what's the big problem that we're facing here?
I feel like I mentioned it in, maybe not in the exact words, but I feel like it's that they're trying to make an exact translation both ways.
Yes.
Like, I feel like when a movie is trying to turn into a game, they have to get these plot points from the movie and shoehorn them into the game, instead of trying to make maybe an altered version that would make more sense in the game world, and
the movie
vice
world.
versa.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Dakota, what do you think the biggest problem is?
I think that the biggest problem is the cash grab problem. I think that either way, when you go from movie to game or game to movie, it seems that the primary motivator is easy cash grab. If a game has huge success, let's make a movie, or vice versa. And then kind of as a result of that, you get all these other sub-problems. Mainly, you don't have people who know anything about the source material trying to produce the target material, and you don't have people that care about the source material because of that. And so you wind up with these things that barely resemble or don't resemble at all their source material, and so they don't deliver on the promise of an adaptation. You just get something that just doesn't work.
I understand. I'm gonna Mitch, you say yours, and I want to kind of go back to what your comment just was, Dakota.
No, let's talk about it. Like, because I agree. I think that's the main thing. Is another thing is that you have people that don't really care or had no involvement whatsoever with the source trying to produce the target. Like, that's a very good and concise thought. Like, that it makes a lot of sense. You have people who have never played Doom before making a game or a movie about Doom. Like, that's
right.
That's stupid.
I mean, but this,
right.
Like, I feel like this money issue is a much bigger deal when it comes to games interacting with movies in storytelling mediums. We also have books that have been turned into games, and vice versa. I think games turning into books, I think that's totally fine. Like, I mean, of course there's going to be a lot of crappy, cheesy books out there, but I feel overall that, I don't know, I felt that game translating into books hasn't been a big issue.
Well, because
Books
there's a
into
lot
game-
of lore behind these games
Yeah,
that people
there's a lot
don't
of
realize
lore.
from the game. Like the Halo books apparently are very, very good.
This is a thing I was bringing up last time. One of the main reasons I did not like Halo was because they had such an expanded universe that they tried to make all these different books, and I forget which Halo it was. Maybe Halo, the one with all the different Spartans. You know, it was one of those side
God,
book
that was
games.
the worst one. Halo
And like,
Reach.
but even Halo 3, like, they had all these separate books that I feel like they nodded a lot to in the game. And to me, who didn't read those Halo books, because I never really too much was into the story anyway, people are like, oh man, I was so happy when I did this thing because of all this stuff in those 2 other books. I'm like, I don't want to have to integrate, like, I don't want to have to read an expanded universe to enjoy the game by itself.
Well, that's the game's fault for
Yes.
for being designed poorly, such that there's gaps in the lore if you haven't filled them. And if they're important, that's one thing. But I mean, if they're insignificant, kind of throwaway, almost Easter eggs in a way for bonus nuggets for readers, that's fine. But if they're leaving large plot holes or backstories that you're just kind of scratching your head over, that's a problem.
You know what, do you guys remember, what I thought was kind of interesting, the Matrix game?
Oh, the MMO?
No, not the MMO. There was a Matrix single-player game on, like, PS2.
Yes.
Way back in the day.
I
And it
know
was
the one.
supposed to bridge the point between the first Matrix and the second Matrix movies.
Right.
And I think you played as, like, 2 of the other commanders. I thought that was kind of a fun take. Like, they introduced these characters in the movie, and you didn't really have to know too much about them in the movie. They were just like, oh, these are captains, whatever and whatever.
Oh,
and
yeah.
Yeah,
I
and then
remember
in the
that.
game, it was all about them. So I thought that's a fun way to integrate, like, a movie in a game. You have kind of like a side, what they always do in a lot of in the Star Wars universe. Like, they had Shadows of the Empire on the N64.
Yeah.
That was an amazing game, and it wasn't in all the Star Wars books. Anytime that it's based around the movie, as long as the main medium for the story has everything in there, has every plot point in there, anything else, I think, on the sides, as long as it's good, I mean, that's just
gravy.
a bonus. Yeah.
You played as Captain Will Smith's wife, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Captain Will Smith's
Will
wife.
Smith's wife.
Yes,
Perfect.
I remember that. Yeah, that was
Perfect.
cool. I remember enjoying that game a lot, but I was obsessed with the Matrix. That may have been why. I can't remember if the game was good. My gut says probably not.
I'm gonna need to hold you guys off for a second. There was a Matrix MMO.
Yeah.
Where was I when this happened?
It was I think it was called the Matrix Online.
Yeah. It was,
GMs would play as characters from the movies, I believe, and it had its own little culture. It was kind of, I don't know, Chris, do you remember around the same time as WoW? I mean, so long
I
ago
think
now, 10 years or so.
bit. Yeah, I think like a little bit before WoW, and it had, you either picked one of the factions. You either picked I don't know what they were called, the humans, or you picked agents. And
That's
I think
wild.
it had a combo fight system that it didn't end up translating well, because at the time they tried to be too big for what the technology allowed at the time. Like, the combo system didn't work because it was so laggy. Like,
Right.
not everybody had broadband, and it just wasn't working.
Wow.
Yeah.
I heard nothing about this game. It's why when you said it, I was just like, what?
I wish I knew more about the game so I could tell you more about the game.
Yeah,
Well,
that's what I knew about
To
it.
answer your question, Chris, before of what I think the main problem is what I said earlier, and I think it translates to books, movies, games, in any direction, comics. If the universe doesn't allow it to be translated, don't fucking translate it. Like, I don't think that the Super Mario game, I don't think there's enough there to make a movie out of it. Like, it's just it's not, I don't know, deep enough, I guess, to be depicted in any other way than Super Mario. And
I disagree. Like, if somebody has the skills to translate it, like, it would be really difficult to translate a Mario game into a great movie, but I'm sure that out there somewhere, there's someone or some group, some studio can do it. Like,
I'm with Mitch on this one. I don't think that game needs to be adapted, and here's why. I go back to the two pillars. Who cares about Mario's narrative? Nobody cares about Mario's narrative. Everybody plays Mario because the gameplay is always so tight. Nintendo puts a lot of devotion and love into their games to make them solid games. I don't know anybody that's biting their fingernails going, I wonder what's going to happen in the next Mario. Is Princess Peach going to make it? I mean, that's not on anybody's mind. People just like Mario so they can play Mario.
I totally agree.
That's the kind of game that doesn't need to be translated to a narrative medium.
But you don't have to think as if it needs to be or it doesn't need to be. I feel like it doesn't need to be at all.
The statement wasn't need to be, but if the storyline is there and should be, I guess.
Yeah, exactly. It should. There's no rules. There's no rule that says we can't make Mario into a movie. If somebody wants to do it, give it another whirl. I'm game.
Dude, it's like making Pac-Man a movie. There's no storyline there. Don't make it a fucking movie.
Here's an example coming up. Angry Birds. Why is that being made into a movie?
That is not being... Don't tell me that's being made into a movie.
It's being made into a movie.
I don't want to live on this planet anymore.
All right, so let's talk about some games and or movies adaptations that are coming and what we think about them. Mitch, Angry Birds.
Oh my god. Okay.
See, I suffer. I think it suffers from the exact same problem that the Mario adaptation did. The game Angry Birds is played because of the gameplay. Nobody plays the game Angry Birds because they care about the storyline.
I didn't know there was a storyline.
I don't either, which begs the question: why is it being made?
There doesn't have
pigs
to be
are taking birds. I think that's the storyline. The pigs are kidnapping little baby birds.
Something like that.
Angry.
Pigs and birds are at war.
This is the thing that goes back. The human mind needs stories. We make stories. There was a study a long time ago. A psychological study done where they had students.
Whoa, don't bring your grad school into this
hold on,
argument.
back up. They had students go into some lab and they showed all they had was a little movie of a big circle, a little circle, and a triangle. And they were moving arbitrarily. It was the same for everybody across some screen. And so the researchers asked what happened, and every single person made a story about it. Not one person said, "Oh, it's just a bunch of triangles and circles." What? They're like, "What did you think happened?" And everybody's like, "Oh, the big circle was ganging up with the little circle to beat up the triangle." We want to tell a story, just as people in general, about something.
But that doesn't mean we should have an Angry Birds story movie. No,
it doesn't mean that we shouldn't. It doesn't mean that.
No, it does
who's the movie czar that tells us we can't have?
Hi, my name is Mitch. I'm the movie czar.
Oh, yeah, I think I'm the perfect man for the job. Actually.
Right,
all right,
submit your applications. We're looking for
a
movie czar, so just send them to analogstickradio@gmail.com.
I mean, it's just semantics. I mean, should, need.
Yeah,
but what we're saying is that these are the types of source materials that just don't make good stuff. And so you're saying, Chris, it's going to take the right man for the job or right woman.
That's what I feel like. I mean, maybe the Angry Birds movie won't be made for us. They might turn into a charming kids movie.
Well, of course,
where birds versus pigs. That's all you need. Birds versus pigs. Every movie could be something versus something.
But see, this is kind of going back to my point. I don't think somebody sat down and said, I really have this good narrative idea for Angry Birds. I think somebody sat down and said, can you believe the fucking money we're going to make? And they're going to make so much money.
That's the problem is that they're forcing, I guess I should say, without a good intent or storyline, they are forcing something into a storyline that it should not be. The Angry Birds kids movie, that might be great, but I don't see that being made. The problem is they're taking an environment that doesn't really lend itself to being made into whatever medium it's being translated into. And instead of trying to figure out a good way to do it, they're just shoving it into something because whatever.
Yeah.
That's the problem.
I agree.
With certain games or with certain storylines going from one direction to the other, for example, I'll just use Resident Evil. There's a very large environment there, and the storyline is good, and you can translate that from game to movie. It works, and it's quite easy, as you said, Chris. It's not too much of a stretch of the reality too much. And I think that's another big issue is that from games to movies, games have a lot easier time breaking the rules of reality. It's extremely easy because most of the time it's animated. And So you can just kind of break the rules, without whatever. You just do whatever you
and
want.
the player's already looking for escapism.
Exactly.
So
In a
it's easier to
movie,
swallow.
it's live action, so you can only go as far as like CGI and special effects will allow you to. So if you don't break the rules of reality in the movie, as well as the game did, it's just going to look stupid. It's not going to make sense.
I mean, there's plenty of movies out there that have such a ridiculous word. What about The Labyrinth?
Was that a game?
No, that's a movie. Just a movie.
Right.
But it's a ridiculous movie with David Bowie with all these puppet characters and like
dance,
he's the
magic
Goblin King.
dance.
yeah, exactly.
Exactly.
Like it's and like I don't know. There's so many bizarre movies out there, but they work because of the way the story's told. I mean, I feel like any story to be told can be told in any medium as long as it's translated properly.
All right,
that's my stance.
Let's talk about another movie. This movie, it has a lofty story to tell. This movie is going to have to rely heavily on CGI. This movie has a lot of money to make, but it's also got a lot on the line. This movie is Warcraft. What do you guys think?
Oh man. Okay, so this is a very good example. The Warcraft universe is expansive. Like there is a lot going on in this universe. When you have that much to work with and there's genuine actual narrative and storylines to go off of, you have a lot better time at least making a cohesive and coherent movie. Whether or not the movie will be good
remains to be seen.
Be seen, but at least like it lends itself to being made into a movie. Because I think the main point I think we haven't really mentioned is not whether or not these movies are good or bad, but whether or not the adaptation was good or bad, right? And like Mortal Kombat, for example, I'm gonna actually go back and say that's a good adaptation because even though the movie sucked, like the adaptation was perfect. They took something with very little storyline and made it interesting and made it into a feasible movie. Now the movie sucked, but at least it was a good adaptation.
Warcraft,
Warcraft is the same thing.
So I think Warcraft, as you mentioned, has a lot going for it. So the main problems that I have with games movie adaptations are the one you just mentioned, where it only makes sense if the subject has some sort of narrative fruit to harvest, and Warcraft has a ton. The creators of Warcraft have put so much soul into the background of all their characters. Obviously, we went from just orcs and humans where there wasn't really much going on, but even before World of Warcraft, in the Warcraft 3 days, they were really telling some heavy stories.
Oh, yeah. Warcraft
really
3, both those games, Reign of Chaos and Frozen Throne, had an extremely good storyline.
And this movie is going to be that stuff. The narrative of Warcraft, the movie, is going to be events that occurred before World of Warcraft events. It's going to be Warcraft 3 events. I think another thing that this movie has going for it is that the people involved really care. And that's one of the other things that I mentioned earlier, where you have, if it's just the cash grab, you get people who don't care about the source. The director, Duncan Jones, is an avid geek. He talks extensively about how he's geekdom, he plays WoW, etc. One of the main actors, Robert Kaczynski, who's playing Orgrim, he's been playing WoW for like 7+ years, so he knows what's up. So you get this culture where you have a bunch of people who care so much about the source material. The guys at Blizzard, I think Chris Metzen himself is actively involved as like a producer role in the movie. And so you're going to have a product that at least reflects the intent and desire of the players, which is something that is missing often from game to movie adaptations.
Right, like I don't think Nintendo had much to do with the Mario Brothers movie, other than like signing the rights away.
Yeah, and I don't think they'll touch movies with a 10-foot pole for a long time because of how that ended up going.
I feel that's a big thing. How involved the studio of whatever the story medium are with the story, or at least how much they care about it. Like you were mentioning the cash grab thing. Like maybe they're going to make this Angry Birds movie and a bunch of people, nobody really cares about the story for Angry Birds. They're just like, let's make a bunch of money, right?
Right.
I mean, I'm going to go back to the books here into a game. The Witcher series. That's Those are all based off books.
That's
Polish
I
books.
forgot about that too. Yeah.
Yeah, and then that's a Polish company made this game. Like that, I feel like that's a great thing. Like I would have never known about the Witcher series had it not turned into a game because I'm a gamer. But there's so many different kinds of stories that could just lend themselves. What?
I'm a gamer, not a reader.
Yeah, I'm a
Like
gamer. I'm not
a. You said it like so nonchalantly, like, "Oh yeah, gamers don't read books."
Yeah. No, I was just saying, like, I said I'm a gamer, not a reader. Like, there's plenty of.
No, you
both.
just said I would have never known about the Witcher series. I'm a gamer, and like, I don't know. It was just funny because in my head I went, "Oh yeah, that makes sense. Like we're gamers, we don't read." And then I laughed that was something that I thought. Like,
I mean, that's my own particular failing. Like, I don't like to read for fun. I like to do. I like the medium that games can tell a story in. I like being involved more with the story. Yeah, the interaction. That's why I've never really watched sports. I don't even watch esports. Like, I'm not involved at all in like any of the league sports or anything like that because I just enjoy the storytelling medium that a game can provide. It's always just been that way.
I've always been that way too. Like, I don't like to watch sports. I'd rather play. Like, I have no problem going and playing basketball.
Yeah.
I don't want to watch basketball.
Exactly.
So
another one that real briefly before we move on, another one that I'm excited for is The Last of Us. They're making a movie. And they are. And the writer of the game, Neil Druckmann, I believe is writing the screenplay for the movie. So again, you have people from the source who obviously care, actively involved in the target. I think it's got good chances.
Guys, I mean, like, they're making a Magic the Gathering movie as well, and Wizards of the Coast, the company that prints all these cards and writes the universe for Magic the Gathering, which, by the way, is as expansive, if not more expansive, than the Warcraft universe because it's been around.
Oh yeah, it's been around for 25 years.
Probably as long as Warcraft has been around.
Longer for sure. Yeah.
I don't know because I think they came around in like 91, and I'm pretty sure Warcraft was like a floppy disk, so. I think it's gonna be close. Like, I think it'll be real close as to. That's actually a giant argument in the Magic community as to, like, some people will say that like Magic ripped off World of Warcraft or Warcraft, and then sometimes people will say that Warcraft
that's
ripped
so
off
silly.
Magic.
I mean,
it's like orcs and humans. Like, who cares? Like, that's a staple, man. Goblins, orcs,
exactly.
humans.
Everybody's pulling from Tolkien. I mean,
well, then you could say the same thing about the Warhammer series was originally the tabletop, and that storyline moved into gaming world, and a lot of people have the Warcraft universe is like, oh, that's all based off Warhammer
that's
40K.
In my
which
experience, that's what I've heard.
It's a lot. Yeah.
It's all the same. Who cares? We've gotten so many good things off of that storyline, whatever it's based off of. So who cares?
As long as you take, it's not blatant plagiarism. Like, it's a very different kind of story. Mentioning kind of different mediums playing on one another, I felt like I think this is an interesting example. Binding of Isaac, loosely based on a Bible story.
I mean,
yeah, that's because the creator grew up in a household where I think his parents were like hyper religious, and so the Binding of Isaac is kind of his emotional, response to that upbringing.
Yeah,
I mean that is an interesting take on it. I actually didn't even know that. I guess I never really thought about it.
Yeah, I really enjoy things like that too. You could just take any kind. That's what I was saying about. As long as there's something like some substance to any kind of thing, you can make a story based around it. You know what I mean? That's why I'm not upset about the Angry Birds kind of movie.
I'm always going to be upset about
there's
that.
There's something that you can make a story out of. Binding of Isaac is very different, obviously different from Angry Birds the game into the movie, but.
So if we were to ask, if you think it can ever be successful, these adaptations, Chris, you would just say it's just going to take the right person to do it, no matter what the subject?
I feel like any medium can tell any story, as long as it's done in a right way.
I think game to movie, can start being successful, as we're seeing with the Warcraft movie and like with the Last of Us movie, and then with the Magic the Gathering movie. Like, I think those three are going to be kind of like the pace setters for if we're actually entering an era in which a game can be adapted into a movie, because all of the franchises are actively involved in the production of those movies. But as far as movie to game, I'm just going to go out and say that I don't think it's ever going to be a good idea if we keep just pumping out the ones we're pumping out.
What?
Yep.
What? what's interesting, the Lego game just came out, Lego Dimensions.
Right.
That's a bunch of kinds of mediums all mashed up together.
They're an outlier though, because they kind of they do it in a silly way. Like they take the storyline and they just kind of like almost like make fun of it. They just kind of like not make fun of it, but they just make it into this like fun, weird reality that's not really the storyline. But it just hits all those plot points.
Right. They're doing the same thing that the Lego movie did, where it's just a cornucopia of pop culture, right? And they just throw it all together. And it's kind of like Skylanders-ish, right? Where you have like all these characters from different...
Yeah, I think so.
I think as far as adaptations go, I think games to movies, I think we're still just waiting for the one. Just like for a while we had a bunch of comic book movies fall flat on their face, and then it just took the right one. I think it was probably Iron Man that was the right one, and then all of a sudden it blew up. And I think
Spider-Man was the one that took it, man. The first Spider-Man was really good.
You're right. And Spider-Man, now we're tangent real quick. So the Spider-Man trilogy existed kind of before, I think, the bubble burst.
Yeah.
Well, actually, the bubble hasn't burst. Before the bubble existed.
Yeah.
And for some reason, it lives on its own in isolation, because you almost went through the arc of the bubble bursting just in the one trilogy, where the first one was great, second one was even better, and the third one sucked donkeys, right? And then after that happened, I was going to say donkey balls. I don't know why I stopped myself.
Just entire donkeys.
And then the third one was awful. And then after that happened, then you saw Marvel's rise to power, beginning with Iron Man. And so I think in the same way, we're going to have a similar arc occur with video game movies. I just don't think we have had that Iron Man one yet. Maybe it's Warcraft. Maybe it's The Last of Us.
That goes back again to the right person for the right job. You know who was in charge of the original Spider-Man trilogy? Sony. Right?
Yeah.
Sony Pictures. Marvel came back and they started producing their own movies, and it started working out for them. That's why we're seeing this new Spider-Man trilogy going on, because Sony still has the rights. Too. They still have the rights to Spider-Man, and so they're like, again, what you said, they're trying to milk it for what it's worth. They're like, oh shit, everybody's making comic book movies. We still have Spider-Man. Let's restart comic book Spider-Man movies.
Yep. Yeah, maybe. So what remains to be seen. I think that if we get the right game movie to blow up, then we're going to have a bunch of good ones follow it.
I think so too.
Yeah.
But let's move on to the MetaBet. I'm really excited because I lost 2 weeks in a row, and now I don't think I can lose. So I'm very, very excited to see myself somehow figure out a way to lose.
My games of Counter-Strike were just...
Oh my god.
They were dreadful. Actually, you know what? I feel the worst for our friend Mike, because Mike.
Shout out to Mike doing God's work here.
Because Mike and I.
To recap, Mitch had to play Counter-Strike without using flashes.
No, it was me and Chris.
Right?
We both
died.
Both
of us.
You both right. That's
we both
lose.
lost.
I forgot. I forgot.
So Mike and I are
a winner.
We're like in MG2. I don't even know the names. We have like the AKs. That's our ranking in Counter-Strike. That might mean somebody to something to somebody else.
It's MG2.
Yeah, whatever. I just think those names are so silly. So he plays with me all the time. We play together. He just was sad about it the whole time. And he had his brother-in-law's account that he played with Mitch to try and get Mitch up to our level so we could start playing with him. So he had to deal with me on our more, I guess, serious, like, try-hardy games, not using grenades, and then Mitch trying to level him up.
Are you kidding me? I've never tried harder in my life in a game. Mike will tell you, like... So what ended up happening for me was I started playing Counter-Strike Go, almost like a year and a half ago, before they made a very big change to how you got placed. Well, I started back when I didn't know what the hell I was doing, and I foolishly played a bunch of placement matches, and they carried over even though they switched it. So my placement was very low, and we've just been slowly trying to work our way up. And then I couldn't have any grenades, and he would just he's like, hey, flash that room for me, I'm going to run in. Oh my god, you don't have grenades. It was so funny, because he did that about 20 times in the game.
So you guys let him know ahead of time that, hey, we're working with a little bit of a disadvantage.
Yeah. He knew. Nobody else really knew, but he knew. And it was really funny, because sometimes I'd be running around, and I'd pick up a grenade, and I didn't want to cheat, and accidentally relapse into just normal Counter-Strike playing, and I have a flash, I'm gonna flash this room. So whenever I spawned and I had a grenade, I would just like throw it straight up in the air and like flash my team. It's like, I don't want to have this grenade and accidentally throw it.
You didn't want to muscle memory it.
I did the opposite. I kept it in there so that people on my team didn't think I was a moron for not buying grenades every round.
Nice.
So I just had a full inventory of grenades until the end of the round.
It actually worked out really well because I was able to just buy ops for Mike all the time because I wasn't spending like $1,000 of my money on grenades. So I just had a bunch of extra cash all the time, and I would just buy Mike ops all the time.
I bought a Zeus.
But it was
taser.
definitely miserable, to say the least. So good on you, Dakota, because you picked a good one.
Awesome. All right, well, I don't know yet who gets to pick for whom until I look at my numbers again.
Okay, so so the MetaBet for this week. We had to do the results for last week, right?
Last week we bet on Persona 4, the new Dancey Dance game.
Dancing All Night on the PS Vita.
That's right. Chris bet 72, Mitch 82, and I bet
82 is the golden number.
82 is the golden number. So, based on 29 reviews, Persona 4 has a score of 79, making Mitch the winner.
Yes!
Damn.
And making me the loser.
All right.
We made it.
So, 82.
Wait, hold on. 79. Oh, yeah, because you're 8 away, aren't you?
Yes, that's right.
Chris, you're only 7 away. Chris, you just barely made it.
Boom,
That's
shakalaka.
Right. All right, Dakota. So what games do you think you're going to play this week?
This week I will probably play Rocket League.
I don't want to hinder that too much because I play that with you.
Right. Heroes of the Storm.
Okay.
Don't hinder that. He hasn't
no.
even played it.
Can we make a new MetaBet? You cannot play anything other than Heroes of the Storm this week. Because you need to rank up.
Whoa, I like that one. That's a little spicy.
You can only play Heroes of the Storm this week because if you come back next week and you are not our level, I'm gonna be so mad at you.
Okay, I will compromise with you. I have to write a review for a game at Paul's request, so I'm gonna play that game and Heroes of the Storm.
Fine.
I accept it.
Done. Right. So hopefully next week we will have Dakota being able to play ranked in Heroes of the Storm.
All right. So this week we're gonna bet on Disgaea 5.
Ooh. Okay.
I'm going to so everybody write down their numbers privately.
Well, tell me a little bit about this game. Let's talk about it a little bit.
God, I don't know much about the game. I believe it's RPG. JRPG on the Vita as well, I think. Gosh, I wish I
see the Vita.
I'm trying to not look at the Metacritic page.
The Vita had a lower score. I think I'm gonna ride with that. All right, hold on. I'm gonna write down my notes.
I believe it's a very anime type. I thought it was a fighting game.
Yeah. So this is no. You might be thinking of Persona.
I think I'm in Persona again. Is this a more tactical? Is this like a turn-based? Okay.
Oh, okay. Yes, I did see this as well. Okay, so now I know exactly what we're talking about. Okay.
And it looks like this is actually coming out on PS4, not Vita.
Oh,
so it is a main console title that influences your score.
Interesting.
I have my number.
This is tough.
This is a tough one. Okay, I have my score as well.
And Chris, do you have your score?
Yes, I have it.
Okay, Chris,
all right.
What's yours?
Mine's 77.
Okay. 77. Mitch?
80.
80, and I went with the tried and true 82.
I knew.
Oh man, this is close. Manwich is not the money position this week.
No, I'm in the sandwich. I can't lose again. This
is
great.
My god! So the game comes out in a day and 9 hours, or one day before release. And so far, with 23 critics reviewing, the Metascore is 82. Yes.
Currently,
that doesn't mean anything yet. That
doesn't mean anything.
I cannot believe it's 82 again right now.
How many votes are in, or how many scores are in?
23 critics.
Oh shit!
What? Well, hold on. Damn it! God damn it! Two people got to give it zeros.
It's apparently the number.
This is wild, man. I mean, this is just the typical 7.7 out of, or what did it say? 77 out of 100 IGN. Whatever, man. Like the scores are always.
IGN had it 77 out of 100.
I don't know.
Oh! I was like, what?
So
let's go by IGN next time.
The Manwich is the money position right now.
Damn it!
I'm feeling real good. I knew you.
Oh, yeah.
I knew you were gonna do 82. I actually just gamed this one. I knew you were gonna pick 82, Dakota. And Chris, I had a feeling you were still gonna go lower, so I just picked a number in the middle.
Oh, to try because you can't. Can you not lose again?
I can't lose again. There's literally no way to lose because if we tie at 81, Chris loses, and if Chris and I tie at 79, which I would still win, you lose.
Son of a bitch.
So the manwich is the money position here.
Oh
Damn.
my god. All right, well, that's it for the MetaBet. We'll check back in next week.
Yeah, check back in next week. We'll figure out who wins this week. I definitely won't lose, at least, so that's pretty great. Hopefully, when we come back, Dakota will be level 30 in Heroes of the Storm so that we can play some ranked. And other than that, yeah, so we haven't really announced it yet, but our posting schedule is that we're always going to be recording on Tuesday and then posting it on Thursday. So you're going to see it every Thursday. We're going to be doing every week. We're going to slowly start putting it in on different feeds and whatnot, so it should be a lot easier to find. If you've never been to BitCultures before, though, that's where we're mainly located. Definitely take a look at bitcultures.com. We've got a lot of articles from the old games, from the new games. We just got a lot of stuff coming out. Just take a look at it. It's kind of just like a really big soapbox for everybody just to say how they feel about things. Hey, guys, you have any last words before we wrap it up?
Well, I think that's it.
Chris,
week.
Chris, I heard through the grapevine that there's a rinse and repeat prequel.
Yeah,
no.
Don't worry. I'll give you the deets next week.
So Chris is going to be playing our rinse and repeat quote unquote prequel next week, and we'll let you know how that goes. I for one am extremely excited. Dakota, any other last words?
Yeah, I think in 6 weeks, I'm going to BlizzCon, and I'm working on getting a press badge. So if any listeners have questions that they want me to ask people, just send an email to our email address. Mitch, hit
yeah,
that.
analogstickradio@gmail.com. You can also leave a comment on YouTube. We always respond to those if we get any, so feel free to push it up there. And if you have any questions for anything, you can always feel free to email us. All of our contact information will be in there. Dakota's Twitch stream and his Twitter account will both be on there. He's kind of like our public service guy.
Yeah, talk to me all you want. Say nice things.
Yeah, but other than that, we will see you next Thursday for episode 5, and we'll find out who wins the MetaBet. Thank you guys for joining me. Thanks, Chris. Thanks, Dakota. And I will see you guys next week.
So
see ya.
long.